This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA.
Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. We are almost a month away from the new year turning, but some things don't change, like the quality of our podcast. You know we keep it coming with the hits as we get closer to Christmas time, and of course we come bearing gifts like Santa Claus and his reindeer flying across the North Pole all the way to you and yours down to the South. Let me go ahead and roll out the red carpet to my right-hand man. 50 grand, www.shawsports.net, Big Kahuna PNC. One of the biggest elves rocking. My man Warren Shaw repping out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Holla back at me, Mr. Shaw. Did you holler at Santa, whisper in his ear, and tell him that we need to give our listeners something good for the holidays?
I don't know about all that, and call me an elf, bro. I don't know how I feel about all that to be in our show, but nevertheless, we all good, and I think we always are whispering into our listeners' ears, with this goodness of NBA basketball that we got, man. We're jumping in with an amazing, amazing show once again. Quarter pole of the NBA as well, too, but we got two great guests. They're gonna break down some topics surrounding the league, homie.
Would it have made you feel better if I said Santa's helper? Notice I didn't put little in there. I'm saying I would said Santa's big helper because you're not small in stature by any nature. You're large and in charge running this game.
No man's ear though. I can't be doing none of that. All right. But we all good though.
Fair enough.
Like I said, I think it's gonna be an amazing show.
Definitely, man. So in a few moments, we have two great guests on board, really to help us continue this effort to talk about how the NBA is just doing it big and bold. In a second, we are going to have in our breakdown conversation the lovely Taylor Rooks. She is a part of Bleacher Report. She is one of the premier journalists that is doing her thing. And then also later on in the show, in our segment of The Drop, we've got CEO for ReadyUp. We got our man Roderick Alemania. He is going to be on board to talk about how ReadyUp and the NBA is putting together some loveliness for you listeners and gamers out there. Boy, it's going to be a great show. So once again, get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA or get at me at GameFace Lee. We always encourage you to get at our show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where we are. We know how we roll, man. We love doing it for you and yours. So download that platform, throw those headphones on, allow us to be your go-to resource discussing all things regarding the NBA. You know how we do, and you know how we roll. Let's get it started right now with the breakdown.
Time to break it down.
Put the bone gristle.
Time now for the breakdown. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. And we have, I know I always use the word special, but this is uber special. We have one of the most exciting, really clairvoyant and on it journalists, broadcasters, who is now just recently moved. I'm a little heartbroken because she was doing her thing on one of my favorite local networks on SNY. But she is now part of the Bleacher Report family. And she's going to be doing it big. Nothing but exciting things. Our girl Taylor Rooks is on board with this week. Thanks for hopping on board, Taylor.
Wow, uber special. Thank you very much. What an intro. Can you follow me around like everywhere that I go and you just...
Hey,
no, I'm happy to be here.
I'm open for it. Listen, I'm trying to do it like Buffer does, man. Got to make sure, maybe I might get on, is it the zone, at some point. But we're just always excited to bring aboard individuals who are really changing, number one, the landscape of our field, and more importantly, who are just great, fresh, exciting new faces to the fold. Which I just think is always awesome, man. It's wonderful to see, especially for someone like yourself, who I've seen locally. You've been doing some phenomenal work, and it's just great that you're on another platform, which I think will help elevate that. And so let's get right into it. I mean, how did this happen? Why was Bleacher Report sleeping on the job? It took them this long to recognize the talent of Taylor Rooks, and then why make the decision? Why make the jump from SNY to Bleacher Report?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing I guess that always sticks out for me with Bleacher Report is just how good they are with the intersection of sports and culture. And I've really seen that now that I have joined. They have a knack of making it about a broader conversation and not always just the boring X's and O's that we see because the sport really is bigger than just that. And I think that when you can channel that in the right way, you have something really special. And that's what we do here and what I'm really excited to do, while I'm here. I think, when I was at SNY, I had the podcast and I loved it. And I realized that the thing that really made me feel the most fulfilled was really talking to people and interviewing people. As fun as it is, like be on the desk and like be on the beat and report at games, it didn't make me feel the way that just talking to someone and having a conversation made me feel. So Bleacher Report has given me the opportunity to just refine that, to interview people, to get to know them, to kind of bring back the art of just having a conversation. And I've been really excited to do it.
So Taylor, it seems like, again, you're going to have a lot of fun and then maybe even do some hard hitting stuff as well, too. I think one of the first projects I saw you with on the platform, I think you were at in Toronto, with Kyle Lowry and things of that nature. How do you go about developing the stories and things that you are going to end up presenting through the Bleacher Report platform?
Yeah, well, I always say, I think just as sports journalists, we get caught in this bubble where we start interviewing people the way that we think that they are, meaning a lot of stuff is conjecture. Like if you see Draymond Green, right, you may think, okay, this person's a shit talker. I'm going to interview him like he's a shit talker. I am going to use this interview to confirm the things that I already think about him. But I think that when you go into an interview not looking for confirmation, but just looking to actually learn about a person, you get something better. Like Kyle Lowry, for example, everyone thinks he's stoic, a little rude. People kind of approach him that way. So you don't even give him a chance to not be stoic because that's the type of questions that you're asking. So I wanted to make him feel like comfortable and that he could be himself. So we did the game with the lookalikes. We talked about his name, and it just allowed people, I think, to see him in a way that you haven't really seen him. And that's how I try to interview anybody.
Taylor Rooks joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. Be sure to catch her on Twitter at Taylor Rooks. To hop on and to continue that this subject matter of that, Taylor, it's interesting to me because you have a background that's pretty versatile. You cover basketball. You've also covered football. And I want to know from your perspective, how much easier it is to talk to the NBA players in comparison to maybe talking to the college players or talking to, the professional athletes in other sports genres, and where Bleacher Report fits in that fold to make it easier for you to set things up like the projects that you've been currently doing.
Yeah, college athletes doing those interviews, it's almost always like in a team environment. And I think that environment has a lot to do with the type of interview that you can get. If you're interviewing a college athlete, like at practice, when the SIDs are all around them, their teams around them, their coaches around them, they feel like it's an interview. And when something feels like an interview, it isn't always going to feel as like entertaining or as informational. And I think that's probably the biggest difference between interviewing, a college athlete versus a professional athlete. Professional athletes also get to a point where they say, this is how I feel and I want you to know. I'm not going to hold back. College athletes aren't there yet. They're still nervous. They think they're going to say something and then Coach K is going to punish them. But that's not what the NBA players are like. So it's definitely, I think, a more open experience interviewing professional athletes, specifically NBA players, because the league allows them to really come into their own and be their own individual. I don't think you always see that within the NFL, but it's nice that has grown a bit more. But Bleacher has been great because I have approached them and said, hey, I want to go and do this. Let's figure it out. And what we do is we figure it out. And I don't think that a lot of places you can just decide on a project, decide on a person, decide on an interview, and do what it takes to make that happen. And so it's been good. We were trying to figure out where we wanted to go for media day. And obviously everyone was going to be in California with the Lakers, or, people were going to be in, going to visit the Warriors. People were going to visit the Rockets. But there was just other stories that I think could be as compelling and other characters that were just as compelling. So I was like, let's do Toronto. They may be the top team in the East. Let's see what it's like there. I got to see Kawhi's introductory press conference. So there was other stories. Not all stories have to be the biggest star. And I think that we try to focus on that as well. And then we figured it out and we got it done. And that's what it's been for everything. I had an idea to interview Romelu Lukaku from Manchester United. So we went to England, and so it's nice to be in an environment that is really about just making it happen.
Jealous, so uber jealous.
It was great. It was literally like Harry Potter.
Would be very jealous as well too. She may be inviting you for Christmas Christmas dinner so she can have a sit down with her favorite man, Lukaku. All right. So I'm just forewarning you about that.
That's funny.
Well, it seems like it's honestly a great vibe, that you're kind of riding this wave here right now. And I guess the question I have for you too is, do you have a name exactly for this series in general and some of these off the court topics, or when you get into getting these in-depth interviews with them, have you guys thought that far ahead? Excuse me if you have, but just kind of wondering, I think our fans listeners would love to look again, is it Taylor Rooks takes on the sports world, or because again, you're traveling everywhere, kind of what's the mantra for what you're trying to do behind it?
Yeah, well, the name is still in the works,
All right.
but we definitely have some good ideas, so stay tuned. But it's not solidified yet, but I just know, I want the show to be a feeling, more than it is like a product. I want people to start the episode, and whether they liked that person or not like that person by the end of the interview, I want them to feel something about that person. I want them to decide what they feel about the person because the person told them, not because it's just things that you've always thought. And I think that that's the thing. I just want it to always feel incredibly authentic, and I want to give the person the opportunity. Because I really started thinking about it recently. You have people, let's think of an example, like Russell Westbrook, right? You have people that say they either like Russell Westbrook or they don't like Russell Westbrook. But the reason they feel that way is because maybe they saw him in a media scrum, maybe they saw him talking back to a fan, maybe they just think they like when he dances. These are just little bits and pieces of him. But we never sit and hear Russell Westbrook have an actual conversation. So we're making a decision that we like or don't like Russell Westbrook based on little moments. And I want the interview to be the big moment, the moment that you can actually say, I like this person or don't like this person because I heard them be a human being. And that's what I want. I want the show to feel like.
So let me ask you this. How do you feel like you really get to the essence of that? Again, is it just how much background research are you doing ahead of that? How are you formatting your questions to get to kind of again to build that equity? Because I feel like there are a lot of even reporters and journalists or aspiring journalists who may be listening to our show, and then they're going to be like, okay, well, how do I do that? Because a lot of it might just be the rapport that you have. Obviously you're established, you're in the industry. How do you feel like you can get those guys or these athletes in general to kind of open up to you in a unique way?
I think that I'm really just a people person, and I've always been that way. Like, I have been trying to work on interviewing and work on storytelling for a really long time. And I just think it's half experience, but it's half just like being who you are and like letting them be who they are and being warm. And I believe that there's a way to ask any question, like truly any question. And I don't really shy away from asking a question that makes someone else may perceive as like rude or the wrong question, because I just think that there's always a way to do it. Um, and I think that's the key. Like, I don't think I ever seem overzealous or like I'm trying to get you in your answer. I'm like, I interview in a way to understand, not to judge. And I think sometimes people interview to judge. But it's really about like being yourself. I think you you kind of get into a box when you interview people like they're athletes and like they're not people. And I think when I'm talking to someone like a person, it makes them more inclined to open up. And that's probably the advice that I would give anyone that is looking to interview. Like, don't get so focused on what they do and focus more on who they are.
So Taylor, that was a very well said perspective given, and clearly, that's part you and part education. But I also know that there's another side to you. This isn't
Oh,
your
geez.
your love for sports is deep rooted in your family, and you have an impressive family tree of athletes. And I'm curious on how much of that, being around athletes, existing in their world a little bit, them exposing you to their world, how much of that influences your desire when you speak to some of these athletes who are going to experience it in more the modern day sense that your family is exposed to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably a big reason as to why I know that it's better to view athletes as people, because they legitimately are people to me. Like growing up, it wasn't like, oh, this is Lou Brock. It was like, this is Uncle Lou. Like, I didn't like separate the two. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's probably helped, or being around people that are famous or really good at their sport. Like, it just never seemed like it was different. It was just like the person at the house. Most importantly, my family just ingrained the love of sport. I have such a big football family, honestly. Above all sports, we love football. We all do fantasy football. It's just, they ingrained the love of it. And I think that all that other stuff became secondary.
So with that said as well, too, going back a little bit into the episodes and how you're going to develop them, is there going to be like a time frame, or does it really just have to be like completely organic? How do you go back, and edit some of this as well too, to really try to portray the athlete in the light that gives them the most organic feel to the watchers and listeners of your show?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the beauty of the internet. Internet is the wild, wild west. It can be seriously whatever you want it to be. And I don't want to like restrict certain things. If a conversation's great, let's let the conversation be great, But I also want everything to be intentional. I want everything that they say to mean something. I don't want it to be about the story that nobody necessarily wants to hear. So as long as all of it is compelling and you're getting something from it, I think that should be in. And I'm a person that doesn't believe in limiting myself or limiting anything that I do. And so when you start to just do those things, I think you can change the product. So it's really just about the conversation. And I want the conversation to dictate the product.
Bleacher Report's Taylor Rooks is joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. I have a very curious question, but I'm going to roll an intro here for you, because what I really think is phenomenal, especially during this time in our lives, for our generation, you're representing a forefront, a movement, so to speak, where Black female reporters in sports, broadcasters, are really coming out and are making their presence felt in this field. And I think it's absolutely remarkable. What's even more remarkable is the accessibility that you guys give yourselves. There's personality, there's flair, and I think it highlights as well too when you interview athletes. What would you want this platform to truly represent in that realm for African Americans, for kids that are coming up, going to school with aspirations to be involved in sports management, in sports communications, in sports media, that you want them to get, especially from this show? I know we talked about the nuances and intricate things, but I'm just really curious about the essence of what you want to be driven specifically for the Black athlete and the Black student who is coming up and viewing and seeing what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that representation in general is everything. I always say, I remember the first time that I saw Pam Oliver on TV, and it's amazing that now there are way more people doing journalism that look like me, and it wasn't always that way. And if there is somebody watching the show, I just want them to see themselves in me, because I think that's really when you can create something that's super special. I think that we talk a lot about, the disadvantages that maybe, Black journalists have, that female journalists have. And it's no secret that there are many disadvantages, but I think in a lot of ways there are advantages too. I think there is a lot of power in femininity, and there is a lot of strength in being a woman. And I try to harness those things as well. I was reading an article once, female agents, some of the top female football agents, Kim Mayali and all of those women. And what they were saying is people kind of innately trust women. And I think in some ways, that's why when I interview people, they do want to open up to me. They feel something different when they're speaking to me than when they're talking to someone that they maybe distrust. Even if I just met them, you just naturally want to open up more to somebody who is a woman. And I think that on top of that, when I'm interviewing like Black athletes and we talk about different social issues, or we talk about, racism or injustice or their experience, it's easier to open up and be actually authentic and say what you really feel to someone that you think also understands. So while there are so many things we need to improve on and such a long way to go, I also like to focus on the things that those things make me unique, I think also make me a better journalist. I would want people to understand that probably when they watch the show.
So what has been, I guess, as you get people to open up to you, what's been a wow moment for you, for the athletes that you've interviewed and have those conversations with, where even you were like, wow, I just really had no idea that this person was that in depth about this, or they may have felt this or that about, whatever topic. What are some things that have really stood out to you since you've been doing this thing?
Well, everyone always talks about the Michael Beasley interview. which was definitely a whirlwind. I liked that conversation just because I just think people got to see Michael Beasley differently. He's just really an abstract person, and like those are the type of thoughts that he always has. I really like the one I just did with Romelu Lukaku because he literally never does interviews, and he certainly never does sit-down interviews. He invited us into his home. We spent the entire day with him, and I had to ask him stuff. I had to be critical of his game, and he had to answer those questions, and he did, and I was really proud of that. I think a lot about my podcast. I got Rasheed Wallace to open up about some racism that he encountered when he was playing. But it's not even, it's not always about like just in-depth stuff as much as it is people talking about things they don't discuss. Like my first podcast when I got to New York, I had Victor Cruz on, and we recorded maybe 3 weeks after the whole boat incident, with him and Odell and Sterling Shepard when they went down to Miami. And it was this big thing just before the playoffs. And they refused to talk about the boat because, it was a story. People weren't letting it go. So there was no quotes from them about the boat because they would not discuss it. But I was like, you know what? I really want to hear about like Miami and why they win and like if he thought it was a bad idea. And Victor Cruz is fantastic. So he's on the podcast and I'm thinking, well, how could I talk to him about this in a way that he doesn't feel like I'm attacking him or saying that what he did was bad, So we're talking about the Super Bowl and it was in Houston that year. And I say, yeah, well, I've never really been to Houston. I also haven't been to Miami. And I jokingly was like, but I know you've been to Miami. And so then he just talked about it because he felt like we were just having a conversation about it and not like, why did you go to Miami? Because people automatically get defensive if you frame questions in that way. So I think that that's probably what makes me the happiest about certain interviews is just getting people to talk about stuff that they normally wouldn't.
Fair. More than fair, Taylor. We really appreciate you sharing that insight with us. And we're going to transition real quick because we want to get your insight. We want to ask you some more questions about just the league in general. As you've kind of been all around the world and all across the league and so far this year already, what are you seeing? What are some of the storylines that you may even want to investigate potentially for a new story or a player that may have caught your interest, as this young season has taken fold?
I think one thing that has been super interesting to me is how my opinion has continued to evolve about the Golden State Warriors and what they've done to the league. I was always indifferent. I never thought like, oh my God, they're so bad. I never thought that. I think that if a team can get a player, you get the player, you try your best to win. That I'm with. But what we're seeing is because the Golden State Warriors are so good, it's actually been outstanding for basketball because it has forced other teams to get good. We wouldn't see Jimmy Butler with Philadelphia if we didn't have the Golden State Warriors. We wouldn't see these front offices trying to do whatever they could to catch up to the Golden State Warriors. So the effect of the Golden State Warriors has actually been to elevate everyone else because you had to get better and you had to get better really quickly. So the league has genuinely become more exciting. We have seen more talented teams. We have seen more star power. And I think that is interesting that we focus so much on just like the Golden State Warriors as a team and how good they are and not how good they have forced other people to become. And I think that that's a really interesting thing that we're seeing in the league, especially with all the moving parts at the moment. I think the Celtics are also interesting right now that they're playing the way that they are, especially with all the high expectations. But I think in a way that may be why they're playing that way. Mm-hmm. But I'm also a believer that it's easier or better to have your slump early. Literally every team is going to have a slump this year. And this could just be the Celtics slump. I still think they're going to go to Eastern Conference Finals. I think it's a little dramatic just be writing them off right now. But it's interesting. Like we went into the year saying that the Western Conference was going to be, the prime conference, the best conference, but I'm taking the 3 top teams in the East over the 3 top teams in the West. So it's just been really cool to see that shift.
Word? Like for real? 3 top teams in the East over the 3 top teams in the West. Going on record. That's what you're going with.
For sure. Like, tell me, who do you think are the 3 top teams in the West?
Well, you're right.
Obviously,
because yeah. And then you're right, because Houston has just underwhelmed. A team like Utah has definitely underwhelmed. Portland and we know what their playoff history has been like as well too. And I don't think anybody, you're right, is probably taking the Clippers very seriously. So it does make a lot of sense.
Now tell me your 3 top teams in the East.
Yeah. True. Well, it's obvious for me. It's definitely Toronto, Milwaukee, and Boston, and then Philadelphia is right there as well too. So,
yeah.
Good point.
I am curious though of one thing off of what you guys just said. Which team, Taylor, really has surprised you so far this season? And when I say that, I just mean by a team that you really didn't have too many expectations. We're going to actually show better than what they've shown already this early outset of the season.
That's a good question. I mean, I would say Philly, but it's also just because like they have Jimmy Butler. But I also say, now listen, I don't think like the Knicks are some great team by any means. But they have been playing better than I thought they'd be playing. Obviously not last night. The game against Philly was pretty bad. But before that, I'm like, this team is actually kind of exciting. Like the team is like...
So Fizdale's the truth?
Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like that little run they've been on recently, like was exciting. I think it was cool to hear the players saying, you know, they wanted to really go to Memphis and get that win for Fizz. I liked that.
For me, it would be Memphis.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
I really wasn't expecting the Memphis Grizzlies to play this well under JB Bickerstaff. Listen, his father was Bernie Bickerstaff, great coach. I think maybe at times a little overrated, but he was a solid head coach. And so, you know, but JB has had his opportunities a few times and he's been like more of a stabilizer. And somehow he's getting these guys to play in a way that makes them competitive in that Southwest Division, which to me is pretty remarkable. So I would give the nod to Memphis, but I completely agree with you. I think what surprised me more than anything is the fact that Philadelphia did really pull the trigger on this deal to get Jimmy. I probably would have thought that maybe that would have been their intention all along instead of trying to focus on LeBron in the offseason, but I get it. You know, you try to go for the biggest fish in the pond. But I would have said, you know, Jimmy Butler to me is an upgrade at a position that's pliable, you know, to go over Robert Covington if you get a guy like Jimmy B. So now my question is on your Christmas list, do you have Jimmy B? Do you have a Jimmy B interview on your Christmas list for your upcoming show?
No, I mean, Jimmy is a great interview. I had him on my podcast and literally like we just talked about like spades and like dominoes. Like he is just
he plays bones? He gets down like that? Oh man.
And according to him, he's the greatest. Like according to him, he's the greatest at everything, but he definitely thinks he's the greatest at spades and dominoes. So he's a great interview because he really just believes in kind of shooting the shit and just talking, which is always a good interview. But I'd love to have him on my show. So Jimmy is welcome anytime. He's right in Philly. It'll be quick. Get the cameras to go up there.
Final one before I let you get out of here. Is it really just something that, you know, that you're going to kind of focus on players, or you're going to go into coaches, maybe front office people and things of that nature as well too? What's the limit in essence, if there is one?
Definitely. I agree. I would talk to anyone that is compelling. I have no limit. I would love to talk to coaches, maybe owners, people that are around the sports culture, whether it be an entertainer, an artist. Like I want to do all of that. So like I said, the show has no limits.
Well, everyone may take the last name a little too literally, but by no means is Taylor Rooks a rook at what she does in her profession. She is holding it. She is holding it down like no other. The Bleacher Report family. I'm sorry, Stephen A. Smith had a moment where, you know, like yesterday, he was saying, you know, Lakers fans should be on their knees thanking them that LeBron is with them. I think Bleacher Report is on their knees thinking that they've got Taylor Rooks on the squad. Your show, Untitled so far, to be determined. I'm sure it's going to be a success. It's a hit. And you're just so great for just this sport in general. And we're so happy that you were on board to kind of talk shop with us for a few minutes today.
Thank you so much. No, I appreciate you guys having me on. You are fantastic. This is my first interview that I've done about Bleacher. So I'm happy that you guys had me on. I had a great time.
Most definitely. And be sure to catch her on social media. She loves to tweet. She will definitely get at you at Taylor Rooks. Taylor, thank you so much for hopping on board with us this week.
Thank you so very much. You guys have an amazing weekend.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, The Baseline NBA podcast, and this was The Breakdown. Time now for The Drop. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw of The Baseline NBA podcast. And this week on The Drop, man, listen, if people really aren't in tune with the evolution of not just the NBA community, the players, and people are involved, and really the phenomenon that is within esports and in the gaming community. I mean, you're in another alternate universe, man. And we love bringing out people who are continually changing the focus, so to speak, of how we should appreciate that NBA players are just like us, man, who are just, rather than going out there and slam dunking on the competition, would love to be sitting, kicking back on their chair and basically trying to Fortnite their way to some sort of championship. Well, with us this week, man, to really talk about an extraordinary partnership that's taking place, not just for the fans, but also with the NBA players, we got our man, Roderick. Alemania joining us here. He is the CEO of ReadyUp. They are involved in a great partnership with the NBA players. And we just so happy to have him on board, especially right after the holidays, man, because I know people are geeked up about what's going on. Welcome on board, Rod.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So first things first, let's talk about ReadyUp and what do you guys have cooking that has not just NBA players, but NBA fans and also the esports and gaming community uber excited about as we get closer and closer to the 2019 year?
So, really kind of the goal of ReadyUp, it's all about connecting all those people that are playing video games, whether they're playing, on teams or they're just playing with their crew of people, the same way that people play pickup basketball. So it's all about kind of connecting people. There's 3 pillars to our business. It's meet, compete, and get better. The best way to think about meet is almost think of it like LinkedIn for gaming. If you're a player looking for a team or a team looking for a player, and I'm talking across any game on any platform, so it could be PC, it could be PlayStation, it could be Xbox One, it could be mobile. We're here to help you find people that like the same game you like. Not only are they going to be same skilled, but they're going to be people that you want to hang with, you want to play with. So it's just not about being same skilled, it's about being like-minded. Think about compete as almost like team management. Once you find a crew of people that you want to play with, it's about staying organized. Who's on your team or who's in your crew that you like to play with? When are we going to practice? Are we going to play in tournaments? And this, again, could be at all levels. It could be someone who's aspiring to be a pro, or it could be just the 3 of us trying to do a pickup game on Thursday night where we all want to jump in on Fortnite together. We've also created a calendar for people that are interested in anything going on with esports. So if you're trying to find out, when's the next Fortnite tournament, or, when's Ninja streaming, you could go to this calendar. Think of it almost like the same way you go to ESPN to find out when your favorite team's playing and what channel it's on in your local area. And then there's finally Get Better, which we'll launch in 2019, which is a marketplace of services or fan experiences. So if you want to find a coach, you can go to our marketplace and find a coach. If you're a really kick-ass Fortnite player and you want to offer coaching services, you offer coaching services. If you're an NBA player and you want to create a fan experience where people can come and join you online to play, you can go to this marketplace, whether that be something that's sponsored by a brand, or it could be something where it's like, hey, just come in and play. So yeah, ReadyUp, meet, compete, and get better.
Rod, that sounds, pretty amazing, I think, for where we're in this space right now, especially in the gaming community. Talk to us a little bit of just how long has the company been together and formed the application, and then how'd you guys get connected with the National Basketball Players Association?
Sure. So, we are a bunch of old dudes, old entrepreneur guys. We've all been in and out of the video game space and entertainment space for the last 20 plus years. We started the company about almost 2 years coming up next year. My co-founder is a guy named Jonathan Wendell, but he's better known as a first full-time pro gamer. And his gamer tag was Fatality. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he won 12 world championships.
I'm sure he's killed me off a few times.
Oh, dude, he won. He won a whole bunch of first-person shooter titles across Painkiller, Quake. I mean, he's amazing. He was actually just inducted into the Esports Hall of Fame about 2 weeks ago. But I mean, even though he's technically been retired for the last 12, 13 years, the guy's still crazy skilled. About a year ago, he decided that he wanted to be number one in PUBG just because he can. And for a while, he's ranked number one in PUBG in the North American server. So the guy's still amazing. But Fatality, myself and the guy named Sean Allen, who worked at PlayStation, came up with this idea. We started building this team of folks. All these folks are people that we had worked with in our past careers. And this is kind of how we connected with the NBPA. Our CMO is a guy named Glenn Chin. And Glenn was at EA from 92 to I think about 2005. And Glenn's claim to fame was he was part of the original team that created the EA Sports brand. And he left EA basically running the sports brand in 2005 and went to Nike and ran the brand for basketball. And throughout Glenn's career, he's been working with a lot of the folks at the PA, and they gave him a ring back in, I believe it was June, July of this year. They're asking him about esports. And he said, "How funny, I'm working for this awesome company called ReadyUp. Why don't you have us come in?" We met with Krista Chin and Michelle Roberts at the PA. And from there, the rest has been history. We just had ongoing conversations. They had us come present ReadyUp to the rookies at the Rookie Symposium. And, the rest is history. As you guys know, we announced our partnership with the PA just about 2 weeks ago. So pretty crazy, fun story.
Roderick Alemania joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast, CEO of ReadyUp. So to continue on with, how this came about with you sitting down with Michelle Roberts and the NBPA and with Think 40 and Think 450, what was the first thing that you got from your impressions about Michelle Roberts? I mean, did she sound like and seem like someone who was really into the idea of looking out for the players' best interests and with this partnership and the excitement that could truly be built with you guys getting together and putting together this platform? Yeah,
what's really interesting was, there was a very dated stat that's probably larger than what it was. But, this was, I think, back in 2012, there was a stat that said 80% of all NBA players play video games. And I'm pretty sure it's a heck of a lot higher nowadays. And what was interesting was that, originally, and this was a quote, she said, we originally thought video games were going to be like the pet rock. But a fun story she mentioned to us was she was out with some of the players one night, and they said they were going to go to Fortnite, go play some Fortnite. And she thought it was a club. And then she realized these guys were going back to go play video games. And super, super, super fun story. And, that's when she realized that, this is something that's here now that these guys are passionate about. And really kind of, our role with the NBPA is to help the players leverage something that they're already doing, which is playing video games, and use it as a mean to connect with fans. And then from there, help the players build this as a business. Think of it how they build their Twitter following, their Facebook following, their Instagram following, whichever following they're building. And this is just another outlet. And the best part about it is it's not like we're asking the players to show up to a car dealership on a Saturday to meet folks. This is what they're doing. They're just doing what they love to do. And it's a great way for them to connect with their fans, because a lot of their fans are gamers also. And to me, this is just like a very kind of easy way for me to connect with an NBA player. Perfect example, I'm a Warriors fan. If I saw Steph Curry on the street, what would I say to him? Probably nothing like, "Hey, dude, nice to meet you." But, if you're playing with someone like Karl-Anthony Towns and you're a huge fan of his, or Gordon Hayward, who are gamers, it's an easy way for you to connect with them. And, that's kind of the premise of the partnership.
So let me ask you this then, with that partnership in place, and excuse my ignorance, maybe I'm not quite picking up on it, but is this something that the players themselves can actually receive any revenue from, in terms of, how many followers they get? Would ads be then on their feed and things of that nature? What is kind of the back end nuts and bolts of it when it comes to that type of payment scheme?
Sure, absolutely. So, this is one we're working with Payne, who's the new president of the Think 450, which is the commercial arm of the NBPA. So, our partnership is with both NBPA and Think 450, which is the commercial arm. So, not only is this just about connecting players with their fans, but it's how do we make a business out of this? And we think that there's definitely a ton of ways. The obvious way is that we're creating content that could live online. It could live on TV, where fans can actually connect and have these experiences with their favorite NBA players. And when you look at what's going on in kind of the marketplace, there's a ton of brands that are looking to connect with the NBA, that love basketball, that love gaming. And this is a great way for us to create, almost think of it as media properties that we can monetize, where the PA and the players can start participating in the revenue value that they generate as a function of them playing games and creating these media properties.
Roger, one of the things that's really awesome about what you guys are doing is you're setting it up so that you're giving the players and really the fans a little bit of autonomy here with more of a free reign. You know how sometimes the NBA likes to situate themselves with, creating that ultimate fan experience. So they sit the seats about as close as you could possibly get to next to the players. And it's all well and good, but there's never true fail safes for those things. One of the interesting aspects to what you guys are doing is you're offering personal calendars that sets, that basically you can set the scheduling for for the games that these guys are planning to participate and play in, giving the fans access, to the type of games not only that the players like, but also opportunities to play with, alongside them, or against them and stuff. So how intricate is that system? And how much accessibility are you really getting from the guys that are truly involved in this process?
So the beauty of this partnership is that this is done on the player's own schedule. We're not asking them to show up at a certain part. A lot of what takes place in gaming occurs online. And this could happen when the players, maybe they're on a road trip, they have a PC or a PS4 or an Xbox One, or they're playing a mobile game. And all we need to know from them is, hey, do you plan on playing? If so, let us put it in the schedule so fans can know that they have an opportunity to play with you. So this is all done on the player schedule, on their time. Like I said, we're not asking them to change any behavior. We're just basically leveraging existing behavior of the players, which is they like to play games. They like to play video games. The same thing with the fans. The fans is just an opportunity for them to have a shared experience with the player. And when you look at how video games are set up online right now, a lot of these video game companies have tournament systems, or they have private servers that can be created where fans can jump in and play with the players when the players are online and playing. And when you look at a lot of gaming happens, a lot of it happens after work. A lot of it might even happen late at night. So that's the beauty of this partnership. It's literally just It's just literally leveraging existing behavior of what the players do and what the fans do, but it's all about connecting them using this common kind of DNA, which is video games.
So maybe it's going to be a hard question, but let's see if we take a stab at it. What games do you feel like are going to be the most popular in general? Obviously we know Fortnite, League of Legends that Hayward plays a lot with, but what are some of the other games, or have you been able to even poll some of the players to see which games they're playing, outside of the fact that they're playing games? And that's it's a long-winded way of saying too, but that's primarily like the traditional format. Are players really playing any of the mobile games out there as well too that they'd be able to stream as well?
Yeah, what's interesting about gaming is that gamers tend to play multiple games across multiple platforms. And so, someone might have their main game, maybe it's a League of Legends, but they also might play, they might play Clash on mobile, or they might play another mobile game, or they might play Call of Duty on a PS4 as opposed to a PC, or it might be the other way around. Ultimately, in gaming, the community decides what games are popular, and we're gonna let the chips fall where they fall. If the players want to play whatever the most popular game is playing, we're going to try to work with them and the publisher to create these fan experiences. So I think obviously the obvious ones are like a Fortnite and a Call of Duty, the ones that are popular. But there's a ton of other games that a lot of these players are playing, like League of Legends. You see Gordon Hayward in the League of Legends ads. they're also playing Dota 2. I know Jeremy Lin's a huge fan of that game. They're playing, all sorts of games. So literally, some are playing NBA 2K. So we're agnostic to what games the players want to play. We're going to kind of let them decide which games they want to play, and then obviously their fans will have who they're following, and they'll have the opportunity to play whatever game the player wants to play. Or maybe it's even something where the fans say, hey, if it's Joel Embiid, hey, do you want to play with us on X game? So we're going to let the community ultimately decide, but I think it's going to be the obvious ones that you see coming out, like, that everyone's playing, like a Fortnite or a Call of Duty or League of Legends or Dota 2 or Counter-Strike.
Roderick Alemania, CEO of ReadyUp, joining us here on the Baseline NBA podcast. So, Roderick, just this past year, NBA and Take-Two got together and they formed the NBA 2K League. And the league was just successful in this inaugural season. We've had a couple of people on our show talk about the success of the league. New York Knicks Gaming hoisted the first trophy. And, kudos to the New York Knicks. They finally were able to hoist some kind of trophy in some 50-something plus years. So that's always a good thing. But in all seriousness, will there be plans for ReadyUp to also incorporate games like FIFA, like the show, or NBA 2K, even for the athletes that are going to be participating in this and also for the fans in the community?
We're going to be agnostic to what games that the players want to play. NBA 2K has some licensing issues that they need to hash through with the players. That said, though, assuming all those things get hashed out, if the players want to play FIFA, and we know that a couple of the NBA players are huge FIFA fans, they want to play FIFA, we'll let them play FIFA. They want to play Rocket League, which is basically like a equivalent of a soccer game. We'll let them play that. So we're going to be agnostic to what games they want to get played, subject to any kind of licensing issues that may come up. But we're going to let the community and the players decide what games they want to play, because ultimately, gaming is all about community driven, as I mentioned, and the community decides which games they want to play, not necessarily us.
So, Rod, I got a quick question for you. My final one here before we let you get up out of here, though, is what is the future of this in general? So as you guys are just kind of kicking off this partnership, the NBA does an amazing job, at major events and All-Star Weekend and, Vegas Summer League and the finals and things of that nature. Do you feel like ReadyUp will be able to partner with the PA and maybe some of these events that like host, some of these streaming activities at maybe some of the major events as well too? So maybe even some fans can engage with some of these players live as well too. Have you guys thought that far as of yet?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the first activations we're looking to try to do something is actually at All-Star Weekend. But that said, we think what the best part of this partnership is that it doesn't have to just take place during the NBA season. If anything, this gives the players the ability to kind of have longevity even when the season ends. So, for example, during Summer League in Las Vegas, if Karl Anthony Towns wants to create his crew of people that are his fans, that are his Fortnite team, and represent him in some way as his Fortnite team or as a fan or as fans, that's the whole basis of ReadyUp, where they can use our tools to aggregate and organize teams and keep them organized. So the whole point of this is about building a long-term fan following that actually will play during the season, but even more importantly, keeps them relevant after the season, during the summer months when they have downtime. It's an opportunity for them to keep in touch with their fans in other ways, even outside of that's connected to basketball, but is separated from basketball.
Once again, he is the CEO for ReadyUp, Roderick Alemania. Roderick, thank you so much for hopping on board with us this week. And for anyone who's really interested in finding out more as you guys continue to move closer and closer, not to just the launch, but also presenting this for the whole wide world to consume, what would be the best avenue or best places for them to catch up with everything going on with ReadyUp?
Yep. So your guys' timing's impeccable. We're in closed beta right now. We're just about to open it up. If you go to ReadyUp.com, you can sign up for the beta, and we're going to be letting in the masses shortly. So everything can be found at ReadyUp.com, and we're excited to have people come check it out.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this was The Drop.
Coast coast to coast.
Time to go coast to coast discussing the news in the association. You ready to rock and roll, Mr. Shaw?
Absolutely, man. Let's ride.
All right, Steph Curry, he's back. Oh, and you know it's official, boy, because his wife is like just blowing up the Instagram, talking about how lovely his man be walking up in the arena. So you know he's ready to go, rocking the yellow America jacket. I mean, Perry Ellis should be proud. But nonetheless, man, what do you feel about Steph Curry's return? How do the Warriors feel about Steph Curry's return?
Well, you know, they want to get their MVP back, and it's important for him to get back in the fold and try to get this team back on track. The main thing is they had won 3 in a row, actually, before he returned. They lost that first game with him back in Detroit, but nevertheless, the Warriors need to be at full strength. Draymond Green is, I think, a couple games away as well, too. But Steph, you know, MVP, multiple MVP guy, they need that man right there to kind of play alongside KD, so to make sure that they can get that NBA championship again this season, hopefully.
Well, while the Western Conference is struggling, this is a great opportunity for the Warriors to not really worry about anyone breathing on their necks. Even though they're not officially the best team in the Western Conference, to have the MVP back, I think it's an excellent thing, and I think it helps them get kick-started. I think it also takes the pressure off Steve Kerr. I've been seeing him sweating in these interviews, man, since the Draymond Green incident. Out in Chicago, Lauri Markkanen, he is planning to make his debut for the Chicago Bulls, and not a moment too soon.
Yeah, man, he's back as well, too. And I guess Bobby Portis, Chris Dunn, they're also, the Bulls are trying to get back in order. And maybe a little side note to Markkanen coming back is now he's saying that he wants to play Wendell Carter alongside him together. We'll see how that works. But Fred Hoiberg might be on the hot seat as well, too. So a little, tidbit here to this Coast to Coast edition here, as that broke news a little bit right before our show, man. So Markkanen's back, but the Bulls, they got to get their act together to keep Hoiberg back at the helm of that Chicago Bulls franchise.
Yeah, Hoiberg tends to be a bit of a tricky name to throw out there 3 times in a row. So I applaud for your efforts. Well, maybe for the Chicago Bulls, this might actually be a good thing for Hoiberg, considering the fact that the Indiana Pacers are going through their struggles, and certainly the news doesn't get easier now finding out that their star player, Victor Oladipo, is going to be out indefinitely. What do we make of the Pacers coping with the loss of their superstar?
Yeah, man, something just didn't seem right with him to begin the year. He started off slow, and he hit his stride a little bit and was starting to come on a little, but nevertheless, just something didn't seem right, and his knee is not quite where it needs to be. So hopefully he'll take the time that's necessary to get the Pacers back in the fold and in the hunt in the Eastern Conference. In the meanwhile, Darren Collison is a great opportunity for Miles Turner to really step up. Tyreek Evans, Bogdanovich, all those guys could just have to pick up the slack while Oladipo's out.
All right, finally, Shaw, out in Memphis. Well, look, maybe a little bit too much for Tom Tibbs to be bringing back the old Chicago Bulls. They waited on that situation. Now Memphis decides to give it a whirl. Joakim Noah, I know that name hasn't been thrown out in quite some time. He may actually see action on the Memphis floor. He's just signed with the Grizzlies.
Yeah, they've been flirting for a little while now, I guess a couple of weeks, and they finally go ahead and make it official. So Noah will come in there and, he'll play some spot minutes behind Gasol, a guy who can still be gritty, can still rebound and play some defense. At least you would think so. And we haven't seen him in a good almost 1.5 years, 2 years now. So I think it fits the Memphis mold a little bit and just gives them some depth in that front court.
All right. Well, there you have it, man. We went coast to coast covering the news that is taking place now in the association. Excellent show, Shaw. What more can be said? We had 2 excellent guests really break stuff down for us, give us some great insight. I mean, listen, if you really think about it, man, Taylor Rooks might be handing us some Christmas presents, and she don't even know about it, man, with her upcoming show. Ready Up, man, got fans, waiting under the Christmas tree, getting their gaming systems ready, man. It sounds like it's going to be a great 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you couldn't have said any better than that. And shout out to Taylor Rooks on Bleacher Report. Our podcast being the first one that she actually gets to do an interview, as she's a part of the Bleacher Report platform right now. So, great get for us, and shout outs to them. And yeah, our man Rod from Ready Up, NBA Players Association, doing big things for the esports and gaming community. I can't wait. I can't wait for all of them to kind of hit full stride so they can see all the great content that both of those entities are going to be producing. But meanwhile, stay tuned with us as we're producing weekly content that's amazing on a week-to-week basis, man. And I couldn't do it without you, brother. So kudos to you, and kudos to our guests once again.
Oh, yeah, man. Listen, I love being showered. Those are the greatest presents of all, man. Being showered by compliments of your peers and also your peoples, man. So once again, man, we'd love to thank each and every single one of you guys tuning in. We'd like to thank our guests, Taylor Rooks and Roderick Alemania, for hopping on board with us this week. For the Baseline, Callie, Warren Shaw. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys. We'll catch up with you next time.